Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, coaches around the world, welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. It is your boy, none other than the Road Dog, with the man, the myth, the 6.5 foot tall, stunning legend himself, the King of the Caribbean, Dr. Karl Bryan is back in the house.
Holy, you got that all wrong, but that's okay. Not a doctor, just in case anybody.
Definitely not
Lord
6'5",
knows.
right?
Definitely
Definitely
unfortunately.
and definitely not even 5'6". Definitely not even 5'6".
That's it. You're just jealous because I got a haircut, Shoots. You know I'm looking smooth.
So are you looking shorter or taller with a shorter hair?
I think I look taller.
Okay.
I think I look taller with short hair. Got a few more grays happy about, but that's what happens, man. That's what happens when you grow old. No fun, but whatever.
Listen, we were having some banter prior to even the pre-show, talking about businesses, talking about just sort of anticipation, if you will, right? I was talking specifically about something I saw in regards to Amazon and how they are messing with the shipping companies, which I thought was super fascinating, where they're actually, having to change sort of their earnings, their reporting, because all of a sudden Amazon's dominating over 20% of that space. Fascinating, like blows my mind, I love jumping on trends like that.
Yeah, and they will, DHL, FedEx, etc. I mean, they're going to take a huge percent. If Amazon went into healthcare tomorrow, the top healthcare companies, like if they didn't go into it, they sent a press release saying that they're going into it. Healthcare companies' share prices would dip 2 to 5% on a press release. So yeah, that's no doubt that it's it's affecting their share price, because Amazon they got 20% market share. I don't know what it is, but let's assume it's 20%. That just go into common sense corner. Is it going to? And by the way, it might decrease and it might go to zero because they might make a horrible error and have a horrible accident and something terrible happen. But that would be the anomaly type event. We play percentages in business, not anomalies, and I'd say that they will go from 20% to significantly more. Like that's they'll do some damage to FedEx and the other boys in the space, no doubt. That's what's happening.
It's so funny when you talk about just percentages again, in coaching, right? Like soccer coaching. It's one thing that I'm starting to preach a lot more of too. Seriously, it's like, okay, percentage-wise, like what are the odds of this happening, and why do you feel that you're better than that? Like, it just blows my mind. It's like, you know what? Statistics, numbers. If you know which ones you need to follow in business, in soccer, in football, in wherever, like success leaves clues, right? Last time I heard, I don't know.
That's it. You spent a lot of time talking about, since you took over, look, Road Dog, in case this is news, folks, he took over coaching his daughter's soccer team, and he's, folks, we might find him he might be in the English Premier League coaching soon, the way he's going.
Yeah, listen, but the best part is, thank God it's the beginning of October as we're recording this, because I am full on going to be growing the Ted Lasso beard for Halloween. This mustache. It's happening.
Nice.
I've been looking for an excuse to grow a mustache just to kind of, mess with my wife a little bit. And there it is. The Ted Lasso's coming out, folks. It's going to be a thing of beauty. That is for sure.
We're all excited.
Look, when we're talking, it's funny because the reason I'm talking about trends and everything else and things to look for and forecasting, I guess, is predicting the future is never easy, right? But you can see certain trends and there's certain statistics and everything else that you follow. Because we had a question come in that says, if you were to help a client buy or sell a business, I guess my brain went to buy a business, but even sell it, what are you looking for?
What am I looking for? Well, Keith Cunningham taught me 4 words are what we're looking for. Those words: sustainability. What is it? Predictability, growth, and risk. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. But sustainability. Look at the industry. Like, is it? Look, is the business built on Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin a big part of the business? Right. If it is, talk to me about the sustainability. And the answer is, one person might say, "Oh my gosh, it's the future," and then the other person goes, "Oh my gosh, run." Right? The answer is that the sustainability, there's a big fat question mark, no matter how all in you are on Bitcoin. Maybe that's a lame example, but the sustainability of the business. They've been doing X revenues for how long? Have they been doing those revenues and had consistent growth for a decade? Or are they 18 months old? Are they 5 years old? Are they 6 months old? Well, when you asked about sustainability, you'd have a different, you know what I mean? A 10-year company and a 12-month-old company have 2 different levels of sustainability. Well, maybe predictability, same thing. The fact that is the predictability of this business, like, where are the things that where could things go sideways, right? Are there a whole lot of opportunities for things to go sideways, or are there not a whole number of opportunities for things to go sideways? Again, like, how predictable is this business that we're looking at? Growth, is this has it been growing year after year, quarter after quarter, year after year, or is this something that is a little bit on the decline? Like, again, I'll use the old anti-aging as an example. Without understanding anything to do with the business, tell me, if they've been doing X numbers for 10 years and they're in the anti-aging space, is there a pretty good opportunity they're going to continue to grow? And more to the point, is that the market going to grow? And then I would ask a question: if there is so many unbelievable growth opportunities, why have they not undertaken these growth opportunities to go? And that's a question that I'd be asking. And then risk. What is the risk? I mentioned, Bitcoin or something. It's built on something where an environmental risk could come in, where government regulation could step in. What are the risks involved? If you meet somebody who is 2 things, old and rich, they understand risk they understand risk at a level that you just couldn't fathom. Let's put it that way. Otherwise, again, they are not old and they are not rich, and those 2 things, old and rich, are very, it's very uncommon. And it's seldom, very often you're not going to meet a guy who's old and rich. They're either old. Very often you'll meet somebody who's 75 years will tell you that they were rich at one stage, right? Anyways, why risk? If you're an investor, just think asset allocation. But that's not, so the risk for the business. That's, if you're thinking about buying and selling a company, your client's thinking about buying and selling a company, your friend, a loved one, your daughter, your parents, your brother, your sister, your niece, your nephew. These are things you want to be thinking about, right? And then, by the way, see, people can't read financial statements. So what they do is they take these financial statements because they look cute and look impressive, and they take them at face value, right? Like, as an example, if you're talking, are you talking to a business broker or are you talking to an investment banker, right? Well, a business broker's really got no fiduciary responsibility, right? They got no license. There's no regulation holding them accountable. So a business broker, it's a little bit like the wild, wild west. They could put anything in front of you, right? Versus an investment banker there's a fiduciary responsibility where they need to, take care. There is a license, there is regulation, there is somebody and something holding them accountable effectively. So the question is, who's putting these financial statements in front of me, right? Do they have, if these things are total hocus pocus and these numbers are proved to be untrue in the future, despite how impressive they are laid out, is there a fallback? So, and by the way, an investment banker will be more, not surprisingly with what I just said, right? An investment banker will be more expensive than a business broker, where guess what? People are like, oh, it's only going to cost me 5 points, or it's only going to cost me X. An investment banker will charge you a retainer, right? To guide you. So anyways, and then so there's questions. So as I look at the company, there's some questions that should automatically come in, right? Like, where is the market going? A big one, Road Dog, is like, if you're thinking about buying a company or you're thinking about selling a company, like, what does the owner do? So if it's your company, you're the owner and you have too much responsibility, too much, you wear too many hats. Um, this is a really bad thing, right? You want to be able to separate yourself. You want to bring in a manager. You want to have, somebody doing operations. You want to, what I would refer to as decentralize it a little bit. Um, Without going down that rabbit hole, you want to make sure that as the owner, you're not doing too much. Or if I'm about to buy a company or guiding somebody to buy a company, if the owner's wearing too many hats and has too much responsibility, well, that's a risk, right? And again, risk, like, the economy? If the economy goes sideways, what's the risk with that? Like my mentor, he's going hard into, he believes that the economy is going to go sideways in a very real and tangible way. It appears to already be kind of going in that direction. It's going to be a rough couple of years financially. But as I say that, don't go put your head in the sand and cry in your Cheerios. I mean, when the economy goes sideways, it goes down 20%, right? So instead of spending $1, people are spending 80 cents. It's not like people stop eating. It's not like they stop traveling. It's like they stop going to the grocery store. They don't stop filling their, car up and going to work. It's just that, it's like there's a 20% downturn. And by the way, that isn't, you are intelligent and looking at it from a macro perspective. That means that a lot of stuff and a lot of people go on sale. This could be a good thing. Okay, what am I? So he's going into gambling because during a down economy, he believes that a lot of people go into gambling. Which, by the way, whether you like that or don't like that, you think that's ethical. Look, at the end of the day, this is about a spreadsheet. This is about a set of financials. They see this as a trend. And Road Dog, you and I on the pre-show, before the pre-show, and you and I were bantering back and forth, we were talking about that. Like, to sit and not analyze trends. It's a big mistake, like the risk, like the market, like, is this company selling gas cards and then knowing what Tesla is kind of up to, right? And not Tesla, but what car companies are doing by way of going, hybrid all day long, but really full electrical cars. I mean, do you think, okay, common sense corner, electrical cars going to speed up and become the norm? Or do you think we're all going to go back to 8, 10 cylinder cars, right? Like, which one? Common sense corner, right? And then you go, yeah, but the carbon footprint. So somebody who's against it will say the carbon footprint for a Tesla, you'd be better for, as far as the government, or as far as the, the earth goes, and the Greens will tell you that we, what I mean? Like, you'd be better, or actually the opposite of the Greens, but they'll say the carbon footprint for the battery is worse than filling the car with gas, right? Okay, but go into common sense corner. Do you think we're going to become more efficient? Do you think Elon Musk is going to get better at it? Do you think the powers that be are going to come together and get better at creating those batteries? And the answer is obviously, right? Or hey, that's my opinion. You tell me. But again, a threat to the business, a risk. I would want to understand that. Another thing I'd want to know, like concentration risk, super important. Like, is one staff member, is all the sales, there was 100 sales made last year and 80 of them were made by one staff member. Maybe it's the owner, maybe it's the main staff guy, whatever. What happens if he quits? What happens if she quits, right? That's a concern. What if you look at the financials, they did $1 million last year, and then you see that 80% of it was with one client, or 80% of it was with 3 clients, and they've only got 10 clients, right? What does that tell you? Does that make you nervous? And the answer is that it should. So these are all things, Road Dog, that you should be looking at. A client is thinking of buying or selling a company. A huge question, and maybe just a rabbit hole we won't go down, but you need to understand, when you look at the financials, there's 3 financial statements. I just literally did a YouTube video yesterday on my Sea-Doo where I talked about this, and a turtle popped up, which was pretty cool as I was sitting on my Sea-Doo, which is very common, but whatever. Where I'm riding my Sea-Doo, right? But operating cash. There's three documents. There's a balance sheet. There's an income statement or a profit and loss, and then there's cash flow statement. Okay, so very seldom when you normally go to buy a business, they'll give you an income statement and say, "Oh, well, here you go," right? Well, they'll say, "Oh, you don't need a balance sheet." Well, say, "Yeah, thanks, but no thanks." Fork over the balance sheet. Not only do you need a balance sheet, but what you really need is you need a balance sheet. You need the income statement, you need the cash flow statement, and then you need another balance sheet. Okay, so think of them as, one's at the front end and one's at the back end, and then the income statement and the cash flow statement reside in between. So not only do you need a balance sheet, but you should be asking for two of them. And then again, you'll be understand the storyline of this business, what happened, why it happened, and then very importantly the end result, as in that. See, nothing happens in a business that doesn't land on a balance sheet. Okay, so that's why I want to see a balance sheet at the beginning, and I want to see a balance sheet at the end, so that the two the two statements for the period, say they were a quarter for like 3 months, I want to understand the end result. The end result the balance sheets will help me see that. What am I saying? I want to be able to see that. And then on the cash flow statement, there is operating cash. How much cash was generated through the day-to-day operations of the business, right? So if you don't know how to read a financial statement, like one of the things they could do is they sold a truck, they sold a car, they sold some real estate, or they sold a piece of machinery last year. Okay, and let's just use $100,000 as what they sold it for. Well, where's the $100,000? Like, you need to understand that $100,000 was not made to the operations of the business. What are they going to do? Keep selling cars and keep selling cars? Well, clearly they've only got so many cars, so many trucks, so many machines that they could sell. So this is not cash generated from the operations of the business. Well, if you don't know how to read financial statements, something like that could go straight over your head. You end up buying a business. You're like, well, what's this? And that's where I said earlier, again, where some fiduciary responsibility, a business broker, they don't know how to read the financial statements either. So they're like, oh, well, this is what the business did, which, by the way, they're being truthful. But the problem is the story is not what I mean? The whole story is not being told. And this is where you got to be able to read financial statements. And again, it's much easier than you may think. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but once you're trained on it, which we can train you on how to do that, not the hardest thing in the world. Road Dog, I want to throw it back to you here, but look, is it a roll up or an earn out is another. So a roll up is where you've probably seen, like, a buddy of mine sold his IT company. It's about a year ago. It's a friend of ours, like Road Dog and I, Johnny Utah, and he sold his company, his IT company, and it was a roll up, right? And basically, they came in and they didn't just buy his company, but they're now owning 100 companies, very similar to it, right? So you'll see these companies doing roll ups of dental practices, and they don't own like 2 dental practices, they own 100. Then they have on economies of scale moving in their direction. Like, is that when somebody's looking to buy your company, I'd want to know, is this going to become part of a roll up or an earn out situation? You ever heard of a financial planner, an insurance guy, selling their book of business or selling their business? It was an earn out, which basically just, an earn out is really that they continue to work and lose their business. But at the end of the day, they, depending upon how well they do, they can step out of it. But it's kind of like an if-then scenario. So if this happens, then you'll get this much money. If we continue to realize these financial results, or if we realize these financial results plus 20%, then you will be paid this amount. But those, again, these are the types of things that I would be thinking about, and like Walmart. You should read the book Made in America, Sam Walton story, the Walmart, Sam Walton / Walmart story. Again, like, they never sold. My question is, should they really sell? Is that the right idea? Like, say that the company made $500,000 of profit last year, right? Their earnings are 500 grand. Um, Rather than sell it, let's say you get a 3 multiple, they get $1.5 million. By the time they sell it, it's going to look a lot different than $1.5 million of cash, by the way. They're going to have to pay off some debt. They're going to have to pay some taxes. The business broker, the investment banker is going to have to be paid. There's always little incidental fees everywhere. So it's probably going to look a lot more like 750 grand than 1.5 million. But anywho, there's a debate. If they were making, what did I say, 500 grand cash, why don't they pay somebody 150 grand to come and run it, grow it? They would still be making $350,000 of profit and still own the company, right? And just take the number one guy and make him, you know what I mean? And say, look, here's 10% of the company, or, here's a bonus structure. Rather than sell it, continue to earn 350 grand and what they'll often do is sell the business and become a consultant. Well, I say, well, don't sell the business and become a consultant to your own company. Because the guy that you hire for 150 grand plus incentives and plus bonuses, his job, her job is to grow the company, right? So it's often this conversation, Road Dog, right, where it's yes or no, it's one or two, it's this or that. And I've often said, and we've talked about it on the podcast, go to option number 3, right? Like option number 3, so should I buy it or should I buy it or not? That's a yes or no, this or that. But the third option could be franchising it. The third option could be licensing it. The third option might be like what I said, bring in a guy, pay him 150 grand a year and keep the company, right? Like it's a higher level conversation that I think that people get, that yes or no, this or that option 1, option 2 it's like a really inferior conversation to the one where you go, what's option number 3? What's option number 3, 4, 5, and 6, by the way? Like the average company will sell for about 500 grand. Get a multiple of between 3 and 5, which, by the way, a multiple, like what do you sell a company for? You basically just take the earnings and multiply it by a multiple, okay, which would be 3 to 5. So if the company made 500 grand of earnings and they got a 3 multiple, they get $1.5 million. But like I said a minute ago, that business, when they sell it, 1.5 does not look like 1.5. Remember, the guy that plays professional hockey, professional baseball, signs a $25 million contract. They don't, like what their net looks like is a lot different than 25 million. I'll give you the red hot tip, like less than half, a fair bit less than half by the time they pay everybody. So the same thing happens when they go to sell it. So understanding that and surprising, Road, I want to throw it to you here, but surprisingly, like most people think, hey, there's a dental practice for sale. And because we're not dentists, we think, oh, wow, that's cool. What you're going to find with dentists is that everybody on the inside wants out and everybody on the outside wants in. Okay? That's like in the oil and gas industry. Everybody on the inside wants out and everybody on the outside wants in. And if I was speaking to a dentist right now or somebody in oil and gas, I would say that they would laugh, okay, with ridiculous predictability, because it's very much like that, right? Everybody wants to get into the doctor's office, and the doctor, very seldom to meet a doctor who's not looking at business opportunities, dead set. And by the way, just maybe I'm wrong, right? Go and test it out. Go meet a doctor and see if he's looked at business opportunities over the last 12 months. And really good percentage chance that he does, right? So that being said, but somebody who's not in that world thinks, oh, wow, a dental practice. Imagine how cool that would make me. Imagine owning a doctor's office. Well, an engineering firm, an architect, a doctor's office, a dental practice, they get very low multiples because of the complexity of the business, right? Because without dentists, the thing doesn't work. And you'll almost always find that the guy who owns a dental practice is a dentist. And whether that's right or wrong, a conversation for another day. But I will tell you that, yeah, they get low multiples because of the complexity versus, say, you got a car park, right, or a parking lot. You got to pay one guy to stand there, and you pay him $10 an hour. So that's like a really elementary, basic business that you think would get a bad multiple. Well, the untrained would think that they would get a bad multiple, but it's the exact opposite. They get a great multiple because it's the opposite. The complexity of the business, significantly less. Like you got a business that sells chain link fences. where they rent out large fences to protect job sites, big events, concerts, that sort of thing, sell for a massive multiple because it's so basic, right? And again, they take, like, imagine there's a big event going on, and then they take their inventory, which is the fence, and they basically put it around the park. And then at the end of the event, let's say it's a 14-day thing. In the end of 14 days, what do? They go pick up their fence and they do what with it? They bring it back to the office and they continue to own it. They didn't sell anything. They're basically leasing it out, renting it out. That's a great business that will get a great multiple, right? And they continue to own their asset. They didn't sell their asset. They continue to own the asset, which is the fence in that example. Like a restaurant, really popular, literally over the weekend, got a buddy. He's interested in owning a restaurant, bar/restaurant on the beach. Very common for an alpha male to have a dream of owning a bar restaurant, on the beach in a tourist type destination, right? Think Mexico and the Caribbean and whatnot. Look, again, these business, because of the complexity of the business, and by the way, the perishable inventory, right? Like, again, think of, you got a restaurant, think about the tomatoes, they go bad. Think about the lettuce, it goes bad. And the stuff that doesn't go bad, why doesn't it go bad? Because you throw it in the freezer. The problem with that, you take it out of the freezer and guess what? It doesn't taste nearly as good, right? So anyways, Road Dog, a little bit rabbit hole-ish, but I love that. And I hope that it's a higher level kind of conversation, thinking about buying and selling companies and thinking about opportunities. And yeah, I love the thought of business coaches being able to thinking and operating at a more macro level like that. So that's my answer, Bud. What do you think?
Well, I think the ultimate business to buy is here's your red hot tip, and that is find where Karl Bryan is living, and then just buy the local Botox studio. Done. Boom. Instant millionaire. Sometimes it's just too easy, my friend. It's just too easy, right? As you like to say, you've got to get in front of the parade. Well, you are the parade, and Botox is me. That's my float. So there you are.
What are you on about, dude? Anyways, okay.
Listen. I do. It's funny. So we talk about other things like you talk about things like perishable inventory in restaurants, things like that, right? Like, is there anything else like that's sort of like that you should be looking at? Is there anything else that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, like buying and so like number of okay, so I would want to know how number of staff. One company's got 100 staff and one's got 5. Look, which one, without knowing what it is, what their thing is, what industry they're in, which one's more attractive instantly? And it would be the one with the less number of staff. And we're going to assume that they've got similar revenues, right? Not that one with 100 staff and one with 5 would probably have similar revenues, but you get the idea, which absolutely could be the case, by the way. But number of staff is absolutely, little red flag. Again, perishable inventory, restaurant, again, that just takes management. Number of products. Again, do they have 100 products or do they have 3? And there's a debate to say that 100 products actually is better than 3, but there's absolutely with similar revenues. If they're doing it with 3 products, that sounds like a simpler, easier business. But that being said, there might be licensing opportunities and franchising opportunities and whatnot that might go with the higher number of products. But I need more information, right? And that's, again, when you look at the financials, it's like, I want you to see that as a picture, but you got to go, okay, I want to know the story behind the picture, right? Like, how did these numbers get on there? And understanding how to read financial statements, by the way, is like an absolute superpower, and I would encourage anybody to go down that track. But that being said, number of locations, they got 10 locations, they got 1 location. They got 100 locations, they got 10. I'd be looking at number of locations, and again, generally speaking, less locations, similar revenues would be far more attractive to me. But that being said, I'm a franchising guy, and I like the idea. If there's more locations, that might be attractive. Industry outlook. Road Dog. Absolutely. Look, the token one that we go to, just but anti-aging. And by the way, anybody who sees my YouTube channel will be able to see that the last thing I got in this space is Botox. But anyways, but industry outlook, like what do they say? Like, are you going into something like gasoline-ish, and then like gasoline for cars? You're building big block um, engines, for 1980 muscle cars. Well, I got bad news for you, right? Like the industry's going in a very, very different direction, but there might be a niche market there. But to not look at the industry, um, and from a macro perspective, you'd be crazy, right? Um, so Road Dog, I would look. So Warren Buffett has a very popular quote. I'll make a meal of it. We've talked about it at different times on the podcast, but he'll say, like, so you're in a boat, and what's significantly more important than how fast you can row and how hard you're prepared to row is the boat that you're in, right? So again, you've got a yacht, and then you've got a dinghy. He wants you to get into a yacht. What he means by that is that the industry, like you could be the stupidest person on the planet, and 5 years ago you went into Bitcoin and you made a mint. You could be the stupidest person in the world and gone into anti-aging 10 years ago, and if you're still standing, look, your boat, without you being any good at what you're doing, you're probably going pretty quick and doing pretty well, because the aging population, that's the boat that you're in, right? Versus, building, big block car engines for 1980 muscle cars. I got bad news for you. Look, that's a really bad boat to be in, because sure, you could build a little niche dealio and do all right, but that's just not an industry where the boat is going to carry you the way that I just described with Bitcoin. But now Bitcoin's gone to the toilet. By the way, you could have crushing it for 5 years, and not been smart enough to take some cream off the top consistently. Um, and now all of a sudden, you went from looking stupidly intelligent to not so intelligent, right? But anyways, you get the idea. Uh, Blockchain is something that comes to mind. Blockchain is coming thick and fast. Artificial intelligence. If you're an artificial intelligence, and you're drilling down and becoming a legitimate player in the artificial intelligence world, it's going to be really hard not to do well. We've got our IT guys doing some supplementary learning in and around artificial intelligence, because we're not like quite ready for it right now. We've got components of it, but at the end of the day, we're not pretending to be the artificial intelligence guys. But we know that that's where the boat's going, and we don't want to be left-handed, holding the bag kind of thing. When will be the last person selling buggy whips type of thing. So we know that. So artificial intelligence, you could be a really average operator, go into artificial intelligence, and that boat will carry you through. That boat will carry your client through, right? Like, the Medi spas is an industry. You talk about multiples earlier because they're so sexy. There is a complexity component to it. Like you have to be a registered nurse to be able to inject somebody, like put a pin in somebody, or a needle, I mean. So there is a complexity, but I'll tell you, because it's such a sexy industry, the multiples that they get for those businesses is pretty impressive, given the fact that they fall into that complex. Like you got to be a nurse or a doctor to to basically poke somebody with a needle, which is what Botox is, right? And that's where they make their dough. So anyways, the size of the boat is what I was saying. So what other things? I don't know. I think that's a good framework, a good few things to be looking at. But again, I just love the conversation and talking, macro level, with your clients, with your loved ones, with prospective clients, to be thinking about, building a business. Everybody wants to, like a business coach, very common for somebody to go around and talk about exit strategy, right? Which I get it. Exit strategy, it's a good idea. It's important. But way smarter than that. What you really want to do is, you don't want to help your client build an exit strategy. You want to help them build a business that they don't want to sell. It's a lot of fun for them because it's so systematized, but they could sell it tomorrow should they choose to. right? You see how that's a significantly more powerful framework to say, look, let's not worry about exit strategy. Let's build something you don't want to sell, and let's build something that if the time comes, we could press a button and we already know the 7 people that would be lined up to come write a check and take us over. That's a way more powerful, um, discussion, story, framework, and picture for the future to work towards. So Road Dog, that's what I would say, Shoots. What do you think?
I'm still caught on buggy whips, but I actually think there's probably still a very niche market for that, just so you know. But that's a whole different conversation. Anywho, yeah. Hey, listen, real quick, because I know that we kind of started a little later than normal and everything else, and I don't want to discount that, but I'm kind of struggling with the thought here of, because you're talking a lot of macro stuff, right? Like we're looking at the big picture, we're looking at trends, we're looking at all these other things. Would you not agree that just as a business coach, they should be looking more micro a lot of the time in terms of, like, let's take it back down to a business coach level in terms of going out and finding clients, because we had a bit of a conversation in the pre-show, and the one question that I always like to ask any business coach or anybody is, what's the problem that you're solving, right? Like I'd like to get very, very specific on that. Do you think sometimes business coaches get caught up dreaming a little bit too big, and lose sight and lose focus, if you will, of the small?
Yep. Good point. Glad you said that. So here's what I would say. Okay, I'll go back to my Kobe Bryant example, used 1,000 times. Kobe Bryant, from the age of 15, knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to be the greatest basketball player of all time, right? So you be Kobe Bryant, and it's chocolate and it's broccoli. Which one do you grab? You be Kobe Bryant. It's Friday night. Do you go out and have 20 drinks, or do you go out and have 2? You're Kobe Bryant. Do you train 3 times a day or train once a day? It's Kobe Bryant. It's the off season. Do you keep training, or do you take a month or 2 off? All the answers are obvious. He wanted to be the greatest basketball player of all time. So therefore it was simple to know what he did on a tactical level. So I think that when you understand that you want to build a company, that could, what I mean, that you don't want to sell, and one that you could sell tomorrow, all of a sudden, spending a little bit of time to get pen to paper to write a system down, and what am I trying to say? Oh gosh, what do you call that? Like when you put together a system, can't think of it right, but you know what I mean? It's just like policies and procedures. That's not what I'm trying to think of, but something along those lines, right? So it
SOP.
becomes obvious.
SOP.
SOP, thank you. Standard operating procedure, thank you. So an SOP, it becomes really obvious that you got to take a step. You're significantly better to take a step backwards to take multiple forwards. So absolutely, Road Dog, be very, very careful. Look, I've often said this, and again, on my YouTube channel, I literally said this in one of my first videos, but it's like when I work with a small business owner, again, the dentist, the doctor, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, what I do is I get tactical. Generally, for the first 30 to 90 days, I'm tactical because I want to get some runs on the board. I want to get some wins so that when we get to the macro stuff and the strategic stuff, they're more on board, because strategy eats tactic for breakfast. We all know that. But you got to get the wins in order to get to the strategic, you know what I mean? Like to get that buy-in from your client, to be able to wait a little bit of time to get the big results. So I'm tactical short term. An example of that, I go straight to their P&L, stare at their expenses and say, what can we cut down here? Right? Because remember, again, when you take a $10 expense and turn it into an $8 expense, that $2 goes right into the business owner's pocket, right? Well, doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it by, you get 365 days and 12 months, and then multiple expenses where they could do that kind of thing. You'd be amazed at what that could mean at the end of the year. But again, that's an example where the business owner's thinking, sometimes, on that macro level, grow. And then what happens? Their margins diminish, and they end up with this wobbly company with large revenues, lots of staff, lots of clients, and very little significantly less profit than they were making previously, right? That's how that all happens. So, Road Dog, really good point. Hopefully, everybody listening can kind of take away that there is a happy medium there. But to be clear, I get tactical short term to buy me time and the wins to be able to get strategic long term. You should always have one eye on strategy, but again, I'll just go straight to their P&L, start making them some money. And then I'm smart enough to not just, wipe off the expenses, but then I multiple, I extrapolate all those numbers out and go, let's say I'm the average business coach charging $2,000 a month, 24 grand a year. I show them, I say, these three expenses we just cut out. Now you went to the landlord and you're paying $5,000 a month, 60 grand a year rent. And we got that down to $4,000. Now it's 48. Guess what? That $12,000, boom, that's half of my coaching fees for the entire 12 months. So those three expenses, when I add the other two, that comes to 28 grand. You've already made $4,000 profit this year. My coaching is free. I've already paid you $4,000 to be here. High five. You're not going to pay me $1 for the rest of the year. When I have that conversation, Road Dog, the client suddenly doesn't fire me when he gets a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit behind or misses, two calls and decides he's going to go away in December. I don't get that email, get that call that, hey, I'm just going to put this on pause. We'll get it restarted in 90 days. And then, of course, it never gets restarted. You see the importance of that I define that well, like how I explain that I'm now a free resource because of these three things that we just did in the first 60 days of our relationship.
Well, the funny thing is you say that and it's like everybody wants to go after the sexy things right out of the gate. And it's like you do some of these basic things and it's like you've earned your keep right out of the gate. You know what I mean? Like it's just, but we all want the flashy thing. We all want to look like a rock star. And it's like, well, you will look like a rock star. You just need to change your perception of what that looks like. That's my opinion there. The other thing I think that's really important is just having an expectations conversation with your client, right? And just because that's what I always do is like, look, there's going to be things that we can really do quickly, and there's going to be other things that just unfortunately are going to take a bit of time for you to see some results. That's just the way that it goes, right? And as long as people have an understanding of that, I think they're fine. But yeah, I hear you, man. So
okay, but Road Dog, okay, can I just when you first got started, you didn't have that conversation, did you? And now that you've got lots of experience, you just because you're not desperate for your client, you're not scared to have that conversation. And if they don't like it, it's tough titty.
Well, right? And that's all. It's just experience, like anything else. It's confident. It's no different, Carl. And I'm sure that 90% of any business coach that starts is just charging way too little. You know what I mean? Like you just naturally price yourself because you think that's going to be the thing that moves the needle, and that's how you're going to get them to say yes, rather than spending your time and focus on what's the problems that I can solve. Like you always say, make a list of 50 things, right? Of that business that you're going to, the things that you can actually solve and work, with. And guess what? You're not worried about, oh my God, do I charge 1,000 or 2,000 a month? You're not even thinking that because you already know that, man, I got $150,000 worth of ideas right on this piece of paper.
Boom. There we go. It's just, again, you introduce me to a business coach with a lack of leads, and I'll introduce you to a business coach with a lack of confidence. Just comes down to feeling comfortable. If you write down 50 ways that you're going to help a landscaper and they're legit and good ideas, the next day you won't be able to sleep that night because you'll be so excited to get in front of a landscaper, because if you just do 3 of these 50 things, you're going to change this person's life. So you'll go to the accountant, you'll go to the banker, you'll go to the lawyer, you'll go to the landlord, you'll go to whoever you can go to say, put me in front of a landscaper. I'm going to change this bloody guy's life. It's going to be amazing. Right? But that's what you got to do.
Hey, one other thing real quick, because you mentioned it and it just sort of popped back into my mind of helping people with an exit. Like, I understand that a small percentage of people, and this always blows my mind, right, is the number of businesses that actually make $1 million and just how few those actually are. But yet we normalize it so much on social media. It blows my mind. Yeah. But anyways, people that, like, if you're going to plan on helping somebody with an exit, I would caution on that. If they're already talking exit, how committed are they truly to their business?
Absolutely. Right?
Like
Yeah.
that blows my mind. I saw actually Dan Martell, buddy of mine, post that the other day of just like when you break down the number of businesses that make it to $1 million, and then you take it to 5 million. Man, the number is so small, and yet it's as if everybody on social media is just making that. Like it's such a smokescreen. It blows my mind. And then we all fall into that sort of that trap and that mindset. Oh my God, I have to get to 1 million. Do you? Like, is that really what you need? I don't think it is. And don't beat yourself up because it's such a small number of people that get there. So there you
Agreed.
go.
But well done, man. Well done. Love it.
All right, you want to close us out with one thing, or are you done? What do you got? Like, I'm scared to open the door to another rabbit hole. This is
No, you know what? No, I can keep it simple. I like the macro. Like I like the way you kind of looped it back where you're like, okay, but be careful because we don't want to go too macro, right? Um, but at the same time, I feel like you got to understand these macro concepts so that your micro thinking makes sense. Like, that makes sense, right? Like again, like I don't like think about it. If you're going to sell a company for $5 million, um, and in order to get there, you would have had to have had $1 million of earnings approximately. This isn't the SaaS Silicon Valley hoopla that you hear, right? Like this is the legit, the restaurant. This is the landscaping company, right? This is the fencing company. Um, if they have $1 million of earnings, they could sell it for 5 million. Um, like people will take that 5 million, right? But my question is, why not hire somebody for 250 grand to come in and run the company? The owners, you know what I mean, making 750 grand, um, and consulting to his own company. Like that, doesn't that make sense, right? Or like instead of selling it, considering licensing or franchising. Like again, remember we said earlier, there's yes or no, this or that, but what's option number three and beyond? And I don't feel like people stretch their thinking enough there. So by understanding these macro, like what Warren Buffett says, like I said, it's not how hard you're prepared to row and whether you're prepared to row. It's what's the boat that you're in, right? Like if you're in a losing industry, in a losing environment, um, is this like what's the regulation? Like I said, like people look at the price of Bitcoin. It's the wrong thing to look at. Like you got to look at the regulation, right? Like what direction is the regulation going, and that's going to tell you where it's going. Like as I speak right now, there is more users, individual users of Bitcoin, or is that the right word? Like people who have purchased Bitcoin today than there ever has been before. But the price is down dramatically. But I would ask you, is that is the price important or is the usage important, right? The utility of it. And by the way, the problem with Bitcoin is it has exactly zero utility. You can have $10 million of Bitcoin and you can't buy a pizza, right? Well, until that utility sorts itself out, it's not going to get very far. But these are, instead of looking at the price, look at the utility, look at the usage, look at the numbers. Instead of you're watching a football game, right? Again, my YouTube channel, I did a video where I talked about this, but like I could just look at the statistics of a hockey game, right? I don't need to see the score. I can look at the statistics, and with ridiculous predictability, I can tell you who won the game, right? And depending upon whether what your sport is, whether it's baseball, cricket, football, tennis, badminton, whatever. You know what I mean? By looking at this, if you understand that sport at a high level, you wouldn't need to see the score. You could look at the statistics and tell you what's going to happen. Like again, you look at the Super Bowl winners over the last X amount of years, and you can see that first of all, defense wins championships. The end. But you also see turnovers, which is basically mistakes, right? Remember, I said earlier that somebody being old and rich is very, very rare. Why is that? Why is this? Why do you meet a 50-year-old, or sorry, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old, and they'll talk about back in the day when they had all this money to do, and now they don't have it? What happened? And let me tell you, it's a turnover. Okay, it was a mistake. There's all these different opportunities that flow to you to make a lot of money, in business, we'll say, right? Like there's all kinds of opportunities around Road Dog, around me, and around you to make money and more money with our businesses. There
Hey,
is an
Carl, let me stop you there for a
just an infinite number of ways to lose it all immediately. And unfortunately, one of those tends to get him. Sorry, Road Dog, what did you say?
I was just this just kind of struck me, and I'd like to get your take on it real quick. Man, we're going long. Do you think coaches spend way too much time looking for opportunities rather than looking for the problems?
Looking, help me go deeper for me. You talking about like the
So,
dentist or like
no,
go deeper?
no, like when I'm looking at it going, because I think it was actually Todd Herman that posted that the other day. It's like as a coach, like if you focused on finding the problems inside of an industry. So again, we can go macro, micro here on this as well. It's like, wow, I see this happening, and then as a result, this is going to go wrong here. If we can, because again, it's all about solving problems, right? So the more problems that you can find in a certain industry, like
Yep.
you're going to be working forever. That's sort of problems lead to opportunity. So are we almost brainwashed into I always need to look for the opportunities? No, you need to find the problems to fix them, which then creates new opportunities.
Look, yes. Like an example would be a business that show me your numbers at 500 grand, show me your numbers at 5 million. And is your profit margin less at 5 million than it was at 500 grand? There's an opportunity to plug a hole, right? Show me,
Right.
Road Dog, your accounts receivable. There's an opportunity to plug a hole. So these are mistakes. So, and by the way, I hate to circle back to financial statements, but this is where you can, like operating cash. Okay. This operating cash is so important. Like how profitable is the business just by nature of the thing that it does, right? Like again, last year, did they sell a machine? Did they sell some inventory? Did they sell a vehicle? Did they sell a piece of real estate? Well, like if you weren't able to understand that, like, do you know what I mean? Like read a financial statement, be able to point at that. You could see how you could get bamboozled. And the business owner also, believe me, they're that, you know what I mean? They're that, forest and trees staring at the tree that they forget that earlier this year they sold a truck for 80 grand. And they're like, wow, we're really having a great year. And of course, the business owner doesn't say this explicitly, but they're thinking, where's all my cash? Like, why I got this profitable company? Where's all my cash? Like, why am I scrambling to make payroll? Why is my bank balance not going up? Why does it feel so stagnant? And they're so busy going. Yes, Road Dog, I think that's brilliant. Like, rather than looking for opportunities, looking for mistakes that they're making. One of the big ones, letting margin tighten until all of a sudden they've got this $5 million business that they dreamt of, and they've got very slim margins. The staff member leaves, steals a bunch of customers, and they go to zero overnight. Right? Boom. And it am I right? Am I wrong? Don't listen to what I'm saying. Go do your homework and see what percentage of businesses are standing 5 years after opening. And you're going to see that you think that it's probably 80% stand. 95% are no longer standing. 5% are still standing. That's the real number, right? 80% fall over in the first 2 years. And again, don't hold me to these numbers. Go have a look at them, and then you tell me if I'm right. And am I right? It's not exactly that. I'm a lot closer than I am wrong. I'll tell you that. In any given 12-month period, of course, they go up and they go down. COVID's kind of made things weird. We're a lot of anyway. So yeah, that's Road
It's
Dog.
crazy.
The
It's
problems
crazy.
is why.
When you say that, because we all know the stat, 80% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. Like we all know that, right? It's like, and yet you don't want to educate yourself. Like you go into a failing proposition and you don't want to educate yourself and give yourself the best shot. You don't want to see who has done it successfully and follow their roadmap. Like that blows my mind. It's sort of like looking at the economy right now. You cannot tell me that real estate is not going to have somewhat of a correction. And I don't, whatever, right? Like I don't care what you say. Like it's just, it is like it's going to happen. right? It just is. So at the end of the day, if you know this is going to happen, and I'm a real estate agent, what am I doing to get in front of that? To be able to sell a house more efficiently over the next 24 months? What am I doing? Like, I got to be thinking about that rather than picking out the new fancy color for my next brochure that nobody cares about and just throw straight to recycling bin anyways. Like, what else can you do? Like, how can you team up with a landscaper? Can a landscaper position themselves and go, you know what sells? Curb appeal, right? Like, first impressions. Like, it's just that type of looking at this is my way of wrapping up, looking at the big picture to look at the small picture to actually make yourself more successful and win. But anyways, there you go.
Like,
That's
hey,
all.
Road Dogg, what you just said, right? Find me a landscaper that is actively partnering with the realtor to say, when you're getting your listing, I want to come in, because there's people that stage homes, right? They say, okay, move all your crap out and we're going to put this crap in, right? We got a better couch, we got a better picture, we got abstract painting for this wall. Like, is anybody doing that with the landscaping? And you'll find that you'll see that staging home, it's not common, should be, right? Mistake. If you're trying to sell a house and you're not staging it, just like, are you crazy? The end, right? Like, just what it will cost you, depending upon price, but we're going to assume this is a $500,000 house, let's say, right? You could stage a significantly less than that, but to pull the value, let's assume it's got to be a $500,000 house. If you have a $1.5 million house, if you have a $3 million house, and again, you're not staging it, you get somebody that knows what they're doing with staging a house, and they will make it look so cool and so awesome. And they will change your house, and you will walk in and go, oh my God, I don't like it. Or you'll walk in and say, I love it. But I'll tell you this, they'll make it significantly different than the home that you built. And they'll take one of the things that you're trying to sell a house, you've never got a family photo up, right? Because that's not their family. So it feels like somebody else's home. And then that will actually, you know what I mean? Like, that discourages me from, this isn't the house that I go, oh my God, I can't live without it, right? Generally speaking. But so what am I getting at? What you just said, staging a home is like a 101, but people don't do it. Huge mistake, right? But what about staging the landscaping? Show me a landscaper that's coming in and saying, look, you bring me in, I'm going to charge them roughly 20. I'm going to line your pockets with 25, 2,000, 2,500 for the introduction. And I'm going to make this place look insanely sexy overnight. This is what I'm going to do. But they're not thinking like that, right? They're just running around trying to cut grass and, plant trees. So higher level thinking, bud. What we just defined was a joint venture, and a landscaper is not thinking like that, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, because we could go on for days, but we're on a roll right now, but we'll wrap it up. Just real quick on the family photo thing. That's a really good point. Is it awkward for you having to take down all of your self-portraits when you go to sell a house? Like, they're just spread across. It's insane. You have an insane amount of selfies on your walls. Shoot, it's not normal. It's not normal. Anyways. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets with the King of the Caribbean, the King of the Selfie, King Karl himself. And if you're not on the inside getting access to the daily selfies from Karl or the pre-show, or you're not getting his daily emails, which are much more informative than the pictures, or just want more information on how to improve your coaching business, visit focus.com. Subscribe today. It's that simple, folks, focus.com. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a fellow coach or someone that you think might make a great business coach. And of course, as always, if you liked it, hey, leave us a positive review. We like that too. So that is it for another week. Remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.